Hi there, I'm really glad you're here with me today. There are just some days when it feels like everything is slipping through your fingers, right? A phone call you didn't expect, a comment that hits a nerve, something small, but just enough to send your emotions spiraling. And in that moment, when your heart's pounding, your chest feels tight, and the heat rises inside, you react. Not thoughtfully, but impulsively. And then later comes the regret. You ask yourself, why did I say that? What was I thinking? I want you to picture this. You wake up one morning, fresh cup of coffee in hand, the sunlight spilling through the window. You're thinking, today I'll call my son, swing by the store, maybe finish that book I started. But then, something happens. A message pops up. It stings, it engages you. Your plans fall apart, and suddenly, you feel out of control. So, here's the real question. How do you respond in that moment? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Your happiness depends on the quality of your thoughts." And he didn't write that sitting in a quiet villa sipping wine. He wrote it in the middle of war, in loss, in betrayal. Now, I'm not sharing this because I have some kind of magic formula. There isn't one. But there is one principle I've come to believe in deeply, especially for those of us in the second half of life. Act with reason, not emotion. That's it. Over the years, I've worked with people in their 50s, 60s, even into their 70s. And if there's one thing I've noticed over and over again, it's this: everyone, no matter how wise or experienced, has made a poor decision when led by emotion. Maybe it was something they said that broke a relationship. Maybe it was a financial decision that cost them everything. Or maybe it was staying silent when someone close needed to hear words of comfort. A friend of mine, John, 66 years old, once said something I'll never forget. It took me 5 minutes to destroy a 20-year friendship because I spoke out of anger. Maybe you've been there too. A heated argument, a snap decision, and then the ache of regret. But the thing about regret, it can't rewrite the past. The only thing we can do is learn to pause. Just pause long enough for the storm to pass. And that's where strength is born. Our brains are actually wired to react, especially in emotional situations. The part of the brain that controls emotion, the limbic system, kicks in before the rational part even gets a chance to speak. That's why, when we're angry, we sometimes say things we later can't even believe came out of our mouths. So the real question is, how do we give reason a chance to speak up? The answer is the pause, just a few seconds. A single deep breath. Ask yourself, what I'm feeling right now, is it truly reflecting reality? Or is it just a temporary reaction? Sometimes that one question alone is enough to stop a wave of anger or hold back a hurtful comment. To someone you deeply care about, I often tell my students, when emotion rises, don't act. Not yet. Don't suppress your feelings, but delay your response. Let the emotion rise and fall like a wave. Don't speak when it's at its peak. Don't decide while your heart is racing. Wait for the waters to settle. There's a woman I once worked with. Her name was Grace. She was 72 years old and had lost her husband 3 years prior. She told me, I used to react strongly whenever my daughter didn't call on time. I took it personally, thought she didn't care. But one day, Grace paused. She asked herself, is it true that she doesn't care? Or am I just feeling lonely and needing connection? That question changed everything. She called her daughter later that day, but this time, her voice was calm. warm, and for the first time in a long time, they talked without tension, without guilt, just a simple pause. But it transformed their entire relationship. Here's what I want you to remember. Reason isn't about being cold. It's about staying grounded, even in the middle of the storm. It doesn't erase emotion. It gives your emotions direction. Stoics don't deny anger, anxiety, or pain. They feel it, just like anyone else. But they learn not to be dragged around by it. And that, my friend, is a skill more valuable than ever as we enter the years where inner peace matters more than outer achievement. So next time you feel that surge, when you're ready to react, ready to say something sharp or make a quick decision, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, what here is real? And what might be a story my emotions are telling me? Because every time you choose reason over reaction, you're living the Stoic way. And that's not just wisdom, that's strength. We can't control everything, but we can always control how we respond. And that is what builds an unshakable inner life. Let go of what's beyond your co. Have you ever felt like your life was being swept away by things completely outside your control? I think most of us, especially after we've lived through half a lifetime, have been there. A difficult diagnosis from the doctor, an adult child who isn't living the way you hoped, a loved one turning away. Or sometimes, it's just the silence, no explanation. Just distance from someone you once held close, and we turn the questions over and over again. Why? Why? Until we're exhausted. Not by what happened, but by our own resistance to it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny, for what could more aptly fit your needs? Love the people fate brings your way, but do so with all your heart." That's not some feel-good quote for tough times. That's the highest form of conscious letting go. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means stopping the fight to control what was never truly yours to begin with. I once met a woman named Eleanor. She was 58 years old. For nearly a decade, she had cared for her aging mother with devotion, love, and quiet sacrifice. One day, her mother passed away. While Eleanor was stuck at work, she didn't get to say goodbye. And she carried that weight for months. If only I'd been home. I wish I'd told her thank you one last time. I failed her. But something shifted the day she came across a line from Meditations. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That moment changed everything. Eleanor realized she couldn't change the past, but she could stop punishing herself. She could begin to be grateful for what they did share, the years, the conversations, the warm, quiet afternoons no one talks about, but that live on in memory. We grow up in a world that teaches us, the more you control, the more successful you are. But life eventually teaches us the opposite. The more you can let go, the more peace you'll find. Letting go doesn't mean not caring. It means knowing where your responsibility ends and where life takes over. I often ask my older students a very simple question. Is this something I can control? If the answer is no, then let it go. Like releasing a kite with a broken string. No anger, no regret, just release, because the tighter you hold on, the more it hurts. The more you cling, the more you bleed. The world is always shifting. People come and go. Health changes. Finances rise and fall. But there's one thing you always have power over: how you choose to face it. Epictetus said it best. Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens. So simple. And so incredibly wise. My friend, if today you're holding on to a sadness for something that's already happened, someone who's no longer here, or something you just can't seem to fix, I invite you to set it down, not because you're weak, but because you deserve peace. Letting go doesn't take anything away from you. It simply returns you to yourself, to the part of you that cannot be harmed by time, circumstances, or other people's choices. Next time you feel yourself spiraling, worrying too much, blaming yourself too harshly, or holding on to anger too long, pause and ask yourself, is this something I can control? And if the answer is no, let it go, like the wind slipping through your fingers, light, warm, and free. Practicing gratitude. With INTNTO, let me ask you something. Have you ever had one of those really bad days? But then, just one small thing made you smile and feel lighter? Maybe it was the soft afternoon sunlight spilling through the window. Maybe it was a stranger holding the door open for you at the grocery store. Or maybe it was your grandchild calling out of the blue, their laughter filling your kitchen. And in that moment, you suddenly realize, you know what? There's still beauty in this world. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, when you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. He didn't write that from a peaceful garden. He wrote it in the middle of war, illness, and betrayal. Marcus wasn't blindly optimistic. He simply chose to view life through the lens of gratitude, and he did so intentionally. I once met a man named Louis, 62 years old. He had just lost his job after 15 years. His savings were shrinking. His confidence was shaken. Every night, he sat alone, asking the same question over and over. Why is this happening to me? Then one morning, as he walked his daughter to school, she grabbed his hand tightly. She didn't say a word, just held on. And in that one small moment, he felt it. There was still something in his life that no hardship could ever take away. Love, presence, meaning. That afternoon, Louise began a quiet ritual. He started writing down 3 things he was grateful for every day. At first, he felt silly, awkward, like it wouldn't help. But something began to shift, not the situation, but his perspective. His mind grew quieter, not because life got easier, but because he chose to see it differently. You see, we often think of gratitude as just a feeling, but it's actually a choice, a spiritual habit, a way of life. When you practice gratitude intentionally, you're not pretending life is easy. You're just refusing to let the hard parts block out all the light. It's like a cloudy day. You may not see the sun, but you know it's still there. Gratitude is how we stay connected to that light. So let me suggest something simple. Tonight, before you go to bed, write down 3 things you're grateful for. They don't have to be profound. Maybe, I made myself a hot cup of tea. My back didn't hurt like it did last week. I stayed calm instead of snapping at someone I love. Those little things, they're what keep us steady when life tries to shake us. And here's what happens when you do that consistently. You begin to see what's always been there. A friend who's quietly supported you for years. A home-cooked meal that warms your spirit. A morning without the sound of urgent phone calls. And one more thing. Gratitude isn't meant to be kept to yourself. Say it out loud. Write a note. Send a message. Pick up the phone just to say, thank you for being part of my life. Most people go their whole lives without hearing the words of appreciation. they deserve. Don't wait until it's too late. Be the one who starts. Plant seeds of gratitude, and you'll be amazed at how life responds. Let me leave you with this. Gratitude isn't weakness. It's soft strength. It's armor for the soul, especially as we step into the later chapters of life, when peace matters more than praise, and presence matters more than performance. When you practice gratitude, not just when you feel like it, but as a daily discipline, you're digging your well before you're thirsty. You're building a foundation for an inner life that storms can't shake. Thank you for staying with me this far. And if something here touched you today, I invite you to do just one small thing. Drop a comment below with one thing you're grateful for today. Just one. And then take a moment to read what others have shared. Together, we'll create a quiet little corner of the internet where gratitude becomes our shared light. Living fully in the present. Have you ever taken a walk down a familiar street and realized you couldn't remember how beautiful it was? Or maybe you've spent an afternoon with your family, but your mind was somewhere else, stuck in a worry that hasn't happened yet, or a memory you wish you could change. I've heard so many people say, I was there, but I wasn't really present. And I understand that feeling because I've lived that way too. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Don't let your mind be dragged along by the future or pulled back by the past. Direct all your focus to what's right in front of you." He didn't write that while sipping tea on a quiet morning. He wrote it in the midst of war, loss, and long, sleepless nights, because he understood something that even modern science is beginning to confirm. When our mind is trapped in the past or obsessed with the future, we miss the only moment we truly have. This one. I remember a man named Jonah, 60 years old, a successful businessman, always busy. He was haunted by two things. One, a business deal he turned down years ago and never stopped regretting. Two, the fear that failure might strike again at any time. The result? He had everything, wealth, achievements, but he didn't feel peace. Not even for a single day. Until one afternoon, his granddaughter ran up to him and said, "Grandpa, will you build Legos with me? Just 10 minutes?" He hesitated. His to-do list was long, but he said yes. And for 10 minutes, just stacking little plastic bricks with a child, he told me it was the first time in years he felt true peace. Not because life had become perfect, but because finally he was fully present. Right where he was. My friend, I believe that turning 50, 60, or beyond is not a time to rush through life. It's a time to live deliberately. To return to the small, simple things we may have forgotten. A meal shared without a phone buzzing. A quiet morning with your coffee, no need to rush. A deep look into the eyes of someone you love, without needing to fix, reply, or judge. Living in the present doesn't mean we deny the past or stop preparing for the future. It simply means this: I will not let what's behind me bind me, and I won't let what hasn't happened yet steal the joy of today. I often tell my older students, make presence a daily habit in little ways. When you eat, truly taste your food. When you walk, feel the ground under your feet. When you talk, listen, not to reply, but to understand. Just a few moments like this each day can slow down your world, make life feel deeper, and help you feel more alive. And here's something important. Forgive yourself for all the moments you may have missed. Don't use the present to punish your past. Use it to begin again, gently, like the sun rising after a long night. Seneca once said, "True happiness is to enjoy the present, without anxious dependence on the future." That's not naive. That's wisdom. forged through life's hardships. So if you're listening to me right now, I invite you to take a deep breath. Feel the air moving in and out. Listen to the sounds around you. Notice the chair beneath you. This is the present. And this is the only place where life truly happens. Thank you for being here with me, even through a screen. That, to me, is already a moment worth being grateful for. If you feel comfortable, drop a comment below that simply says, "I am here right now." Just that. Sometimes, that's all it takes to begin the journey back to yourself, turning adversity into fuel for growth. Have you ever felt like everything in your life was falling apart all at once? Maybe it was a health scare. Maybe it was a painful breakup that came far too late. Or maybe it was something small, a change of plans that suddenly made you question your entire path. If you've lived long enough, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I once met a man named Raphael. He was in his early 60s. He had just lost his wife. And the small business he spent 20 years building, gone, all within the same year. Everything he had built, his family, his work, his sense of purpose, vanished like dust. He told me, "There's nothing left to rebuild from. I'm too old. It's too late." But you know what he did one morning? He wrote 3 simple words on a sticky note and placed it next to his bed. "I'm still here." And for that moment, that was enough. Enough for one small, quiet step forward. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The obstacle in the path becomes the path." That's not some abstract philosophy. It's a roadmap for the moments when life brings you to your knees. You see, Stoicism doesn't teach us to avoid adversity. It teaches us to use adversity as fuel, to forge something deeper within. Now, I don't say that lightly. Loss is real. Grief can be overwhelming. There are pains that no words can soften. But I also know, from my own life and from the people I've walked with, that within every hardship lies the seed of awakening, if we're willing to look for it. I had a student once, Elise. She spent over a decade building a non-profit organization. It was her mission, her life's work. Then one day, her biggest donor pulled out. Half her staff had to be let go. She nearly gave up, but instead of closing the doors, she paused. She sat in the quiet. She reopened her copy of Meditations and read this line: "The mind can turn anything that stands in the way into strength." And she did just that. She restructured the organization, reconnected with the people who truly believed in the mission, refocused on her core values. 2 years later, her nonprofit wasn't just alive, it was stronger, more authentic, and more resilient than ever before. You see, adversity doesn't destroy us. Our response to it is what shapes us. We can't choose every hardship that shows up at our door, but we can always choose the meaning we give it. Ask yourself, what is this trying to teach me? What part of me is being sharpened right now? If this were a gift in disguise, how would I treat it differently? Epictetus said, "Difficulties show a person's true character and help create it." And I believe that more than ever. Every time you rise after falling, every time you carry pain without letting it define you, you don't come back the same. You come back stronger, wiser, more grounded. So what should you do when adversity hits? First, don't rush to label it. Don't call it a mistake. Don't call it unfair. And definitely don't call it the end. Call it training. Give time the space to reveal why this hardship may be shaping your path. Then do one small thing to keep yourself from going numb. Write in a journal. Take a walk. Call a trusted friend. Tiny actions. Real actions. Because true healing doesn't come from massive change. It comes from small, steady steps. And you don't have to go through this alone. Find those who've weathered their own storms. Listen to them. Not to copy them, but to remind yourself, rising is possible. Winston Churchill once said, "If you're going through hell, keep going." A Stoic would add, "Walk with dignity, with character, and with your eyes fixed forward." I don't know what you're facing in your life right now, but I do know this. If you're still breathing, still here, still listening, you still have the strength to keep going. You don't have to move fast. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to not stop. So if you feel like you're in the middle of something heavy, I invite you to write this in the comments. I'm in training. Because it's true, you haven't failed. You're simply being forged into a more resilient version of yourself, finding inner stillness in a noisy world. Ever walked into a room full of noise, chatter, phones ringing, laughter, tension in the air, and yet, in one quiet corner, there's someone just sitting still, not rushed, not overwhelmed, like they're living in another world entirely. I remember seeing that once, and it stopped me in my tracks. How does someone stay calm when everything around them feels chaotic? And then I realized that peace didn't come from the room. It came from within. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If your mind constantly returns to fear, anxiety, or anger, you begin to wear those emotions in your posture, your tone, your spirit. But if you cultivate calm, mindfulness, and understanding, you become a refuge of peace, even in a storm. Have a friend named Ravi. He's 61 now and spent over 3 decades in the finance world. He told me how some mornings, before he even got out of bed, his heart would already be racing, his mind spinning with to-do lists and deadlines. Every email felt like a crisis. Every meeting felt like a battle. Until one day, he made a simple decision. He started waking up 10 minutes earlier, not to work, but just to sit in silence. At first, his mind raced like a runaway train, but he kept sitting. No judgment. Number fixing. Just being there. And after a month, he told me, "I can't control the world out there, but I've learned not to let it control the world inside me." You see, stillness isn't the absence of noise. It's the presence of something stronger. And you don't need a mountaintop or a monastery to find it. You just need a quiet corner of your day to come home to yourself. Here's something I'd like you to try. Every morning, before you check your phone, before you speak to anyone, just sit for 5 minutes. You don't need to meditate the right way. You don't need to be good at it. Just sit and notice your breath, the birds outside, a thought that floats by like a passing cloud. The sky doesn't stop being blue just because clouds appear. And your mind? Stillness is always there. You just need to give it space to emerge. And you can find peace in the simplest everyday moments. A walk without your phone. A meal without the TV on. A conversation where you just listen, not waiting to reply. A wordless piece of music on a rainy afternoon. And you know what's beautiful? When you build stillness inside, you become unshakable from the outside. You're not easily provoked by negative people. You don't rush to defend yourself when misunderstood. You stop being pulled into the noisy race of the world. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And I would add, no one is truly strong unless they have a quiet place inside to return to every single day. So if you're living in a world full of noise outside and inside, I want you to remember this. Stillness isn't the reward you get when life is done. It's where life begins. Because only when the waters inside you are calm can you finally ask the most important question: how am I really living? Thank you for being here with me today. If your heart is longing for peace, I invite you to share in the comments. I'm coming home to stillness. Writing it down is a quiet commitment. A small one, yes, but one that might shift your whole day or even your inner world. Practicing humility and compassion. Have you ever judged someone only to realize later you had once been in their shoes? Maybe you thought, why would they act that way? But then something happened in your own life, and suddenly you understood. They were struggling just like me. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Before you judge anyone, ask yourself, what mistake of mine is most similar to the one I'm about to criticize?" It's a powerful reminder, not to shame us, but to gently pause us, so we can begin seeing others with a more humble, more human heart. I remember a true story from my longtime friend, Julian. He owned a small bookstore for nearly 20 years in a quiet town back east. One day, a flashy modern bookshop opened right across the street. It was sleek, popular, full of promotions. And Julian felt bitter. He told friends, "They're just copying me. Nothing genuine about it." He judged the young store owner without ever meeting him, until one afternoon, Julian overheard the man speaking to a customer. He had once been homeless. He saved every penny to open that bookstore, not to compete, but to survive. Julian was speechless. The next day, he crossed the street, not to confront, but to shake hands. Later he told me, "I didn't lose my place in this town. I rediscovered my place within myself." You see, humility doesn't make us smaller. It makes our hearts wider. And from humility, compassion begins to grow. Now, let's be clear. Compassion doesn't mean you agree with everything. It simply means, I may not know what you've been through, but I'm willing to listen without judgment. Remember Epictetus' wisdom? We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we may listen twice as much as we speak. Let me tell you another story. This time about a nurse named Lena. She worked the night shift at a public hospital, a place full of groans, panic, and quiet grief. There was one elderly patient, angry, yelling, refusing care. Most avoided him, but Lena didn't. One night, she sat with him for just 5 extra minutes and asked, "Would you like to tell me about your life?" And he did. About a wife who had recently passed. About children who no longer called. His anger wasn't meant to hurt. It was a shield against deep, aching loneliness. When he was discharged, he apologized. Not because he was scolded, but because, for once, he had been seen. That's what compassion does. It doesn't fix. It doesn't preach. It simply shows up. I believe that as we grow into our 50s, 60s, and beyond, we begin to realize life isn't about winning arguments. It's about learning to be gentle with ourselves and with others. Because truth is, we're all just trying to make it through in our own way. The one who complains all the time might just be afraid. The one who acts tough might be quietly falling apart. And you, with all your lived experience, might be the first person who offers them a moment of real understanding. So tomorrow, I invite you to try something small. In a conversation, pause to ask a question instead of pushing back. In a moment of frustration, ask yourself, have I ever done something similar? And when someone hurts you, remember, compassion doesn't make you weak. It means you don't let others decide how you show up in the world. Thank you for listening. If something in this message touched you, feel free to leave a comment below. I choose humility or unlearning to listen, because maybe, just maybe, your words will reach someone who really needs them. Keep moving forward, even if it's just one small step. You want to begin this part with a question. Have you ever felt too tired to keep going, but also too far in to turn back? Maybe it was one of those mornings you woke up and just couldn't bring yourself to get out of bed. Not out of laziness, but because your mind just felt empty. You thought, I've been trying for so long, and it feels like I'm going nowhere. I know that feeling. Being 50, 60, or older isn't always a peaceful chapter. Sometimes it's the season when we look back at everything and quietly ask, what am I still moving forward for? But Marcus Aurelius once reminded us, do not dream of what you do not have, but reflect with gratitude on what you do. For each of those things, even in small measure, is part of a strength you may not yet recognize. I once worked with a man named Frank. He was 64. That year had been the worst of his life. He lost his wife to illness. The business he'd built shut down during the pandemic. He used to be active and full of life. Now he spent his days in a chair, staring out the window. One day, I called him and asked, Frank, did you do anything for yourself today? He was quiet. Then he said, I folded the laundry. And I drank a cup of tea. And it didn't taste as bitter as it usually does. And I told him, then you moved forward today. We often think moving forward has to be something big, some breakthrough, some grand moment. But the truth is, Stoic strength isn't found in bursts. It's found in consistency. You don't need to run. You just need to not stop. Epictetus once said, it's not what happens to you that breaks you, it's how you interpret it. Failure isn't a period, it's a comma. Just a pause, so you can catch your breath, adjust your footing, and keep walking. I want you to remember this: you don't have to feel strong to take action. But when you take action, however small strength finds you, today, maybe you just clean your desk. Tomorrow, take a 10-minute walk. The next day, write down one honest thought in your notebook. One step, one breath, one right choice. That's how you get through the days that feel impossible. I don't know where you are on your journey right now, but I do know this: if you're still here, listening to these words, then you're still in the game. Just like Raphael, the man I once told you about, wrote on a slip of paper, I'm still here, and that means I can still continue. Perseverance isn't about never falling down. It's about falling and choosing to stand again, choosing to move when no one is clapping, choosing to keep going even when you can't see the light at the end. That is the strength of a Stoic heart. So today, if your soul feels heavy, I invite you to take one small action that moves you forward. Just one. You don't have to feel ready. You just have to take that one step out of where you feel stuck. And if you need a reminder to begin, feel free to type in the comments, I'm still moving forward. We don't have to go fast. We just have to go together, building discipline. Like an ancient era. Or let me ask you something. Do you remember the last time you said this? I know I should do it, but I just don't feel motivated. I've heard those words from hundreds of people, young students, busy parents, even retired professionals. And I usually respond with a gentle smile on this question. Do you think Roman warriors waited for inspiration before picking up their swords? My friend, here's a simple truth. One we often spend a lifetime learning. It's not motivation that leads to action. It's repeated action that builds inner strength. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Remind yourself each morning, you were made to work like a man, not to run away from effort." In his day, there were no smartphones to wake him up, no coffee to jolt him awake, no social media cheering him on. There was only a man with his will choosing to act, not because it was convenient, but because it was right. I want you to imagine this. An ancient warrior wakes before sunrise. Before anyone tells him what to do, he sharpens his sword, tends to his horse, trains his body. No praise, no applause, no medals. He does it because it needs to be done. And you don't need a sword. You don't need armor. You just need to train yourself each day in the small, right things. Wake up 10 minutes earlier to center yourself. Instead of rushing. Read something nourishing for 15 minutes. Instead of falling into toxic news. Eat with intention, even if no one's watching. Write a single line in your journal, even if no one will read it. That is discipline. That is your training. I once worked with a retired veteran named Albert, 68 years old. He told me, "I don't remember my toughest training days because they were painful. I remember them because they taught me something this modern world forgets. Discipline isn't a burden, it's freedom." Have you ever realized that? When you have discipline, you're no longer a slave to your feelings. You don't need inspiration to take care of yourself. You don't need someone to push you to do what matters. You don't need the perfect conditions to live with quality. And here's the beautiful part: discipline doesn't fade with age. In fact, when you reach your 50s, 60s, or beyond, discipline becomes the backbone of true freedom. I know there are days you don't want to do anything. Your body feels tired. Your mind feels doubtful. You think, what's the point of training now? But it's exactly on those days that discipline matters the most. Because when you do something small without being told, when you keep your word to yourself, even when no one's watching, you stop being a victim of your circumstances. You become the leader of your own life. So here's a small challenge for you. Pick one discipline to practice and stick with it for the next 7 days. No need for grand gestures. Just make it real and consistent. You don't need to do a lot. You just need to do it regularly. Because like fire, discipline doesn't need to be big. It just needs to stay lit. And if this message spoke to you today, I invite you to write in the comments, "I'm in training." We don't need to be warriors in a movie. We just need to be warriors in our own lives every single day. Daily self-reflection. The path to deeper self-awareness. Have you ever laid in bed at the end of a long day and quietly asked yourself, how did I truly live today? I'm not talking about how many tasks you completed, not how productive you were. I'm asking something deeper. Did you live in alignment with the person you want to become? Seneca once said, "There is no favorable wind for the ship that doesn't know its destination." And I'd add, no one grows unless they pause to look inward. We live in a world that constantly rewards doing, achieving, staying busy. But very few people ever teach us how to stop and reflect. And because of that, many go their whole lives never really understanding who they are or why they're living the way they are. I once spoke with a woman named Claire, 63 years old, newly retired after decades in an office job. One day she asked me, "How do I know I'm still living by my values now that no one is watching or evaluating me anymore?" And I said to her, "Let yourself be the one who asks the questions and the one who answers them." Then I invited her to begin a simple habit. Each night before bed, write down 3 things. What did I do today that aligned with my values? What do I regret, and how will I respond differently next time? What am I grateful for today? At first, she said it felt awkward, forced. But after just 2 weeks, Claire told me, it feels like I'm taking ownership of my life again, even if just in thought. And that's what reflection is, Dot. It's not judgment. It's observation, understanding, adjustment. Marcus Aurelius every night would write in his journal, how did I behave today? What emotions swayed me? Did I let pride overrule my reason? This wasn't a ritual for the weak. It was the discipline of the brave. Because only the brave are willing to face themselves honestly. I believe that at 50, 60, or beyond, reflection isn't just a personal growth practice. It's a safeguard keeping us from sleepwalking through our later years. It helps us stay awake, to catch ourselves when we drift away from what matters, and return before it's too late. So tonight, I invite you to try. You don't need to. WRITE pages. Just a few honest lines. You can start with questions like, how did I live today? How did I respond to difficulty? What can I forgive toward others and toward myself? And please reflect with kindness, not harshness. Don't use it to scold yourself. Use it to listen to yourself like a good friend would. If this message resonates with you, I invite you to write in the comments, I'm looking inward so I can move forward with strength. Because life doesn't ask us to be perfect. It only asks us to be honest and patiently improve. One day at a time. Choose simplicity and let go of endless W1TNG. Do you remember the last time you truly felt at ease? Not the most excited, not the happiest, just light, not pulled by desire, not weighed down by worry or comparison. If you have to think hard to recall such a moment, I understand. Because the world we live in, especially this modern age, is designed to make you feel like you're lacking. We turn on the TV and see people with more. We scroll online and see others who look younger, more beautiful, more successful. We open our inbox and there's yet another thing we need to live better. And little by little, we accumulate more wants, a new shirt, a new device, a compliment, a better outcome. Even when we have enough, we feel it's not enough. Seneca once said, it is not the man who has little, but the man who craves more, who is poor. I once met an elderly man named Walter, 72 years old, living in a small house just outside town. He didn't own much. No smartphone, no social media, no big screen TV. But when I asked him, how do you feel about your life? He smiled and replied with a sentence I'll never forget. I feel light, and because I feel light, I see things most others miss. You see, living simply doesn't mean living without. It means clearing out the clutter so there's space for what truly matters. A Stoic understands, the fewer things you need, the fewer things can be taken from you. The fewer attachments you hold, the more freedom you have. Not the freedom to escape, but the freedom to live in alignment with your true self. I'm not telling you to give up all your possessions, move to the woods, or reject every comfort. I'm simply inviting you to reflect. Are you holding on to things that no longer serve you? Maybe it's a draining relationship, a shopping habit that weighs on your heart, an expectation that no longer fits your current life. Simplicity begins with questions like, do I really need this? Am I keeping this because I love it or because I fear being without it? If I let this go, would I feel relief or anxiety? And you can start small. Clean out a drawer, cancel a subscription you don't use, delete an app that distracts you, or simply sit quietly for 10 minutes without consuming anything. And don't just declutter your space. Declutter your mind. Let go of the pressure to impress others. Let go of the belief that you must have something to be successful. Let go of the idea that you must always be useful to feel worthy. You know, when I retired at 60, I feared I would feel empty without work. But slowly, day by day, I simplified my schedule, my habits, and even my self-expectations. And the strange thing was, I didn't feel a lack. I felt a return. A return to what had always been there, just buried beneath society's endless list of must-haves. If these words speak to you, I invite you to write in the comments, "I choose simplicity." You don't have to do anything grand today. Just release one small thing and see how light your mind begins to feel. Choose a wise and positive PRSPC TV. Have you ever had a day where everything seemed to go wrong, but then one right thought, one kind word, or one small action suddenly shifted how you felt about the entire day? I believe you have. So have I, and it always reminds me of this simple truth. We can't control every event, but we can always choose how we see it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke." That quote didn't change me overnight, but slowly, gently, it rewired how I respond to life. Because here's the truth: seeing things clearly and wisely is not a talent, it's a skill. And like all skills, it can be practiced. Let me tell you a story about a student of mine named Thomas, 58 years old. He had high hopes for a leadership role at his company, something he had worked toward for years. But then, it was given to someone else, someone younger, less experienced. Thomas felt betrayed, undervalued. He didn't say much, but his eyes carried the weight of it. One afternoon, I asked him, "If this had happened to your closest friend, instead of you, what would you say to them?" He paused, then replied, "I'd probably tell them. Maybe it's a chance to reevaluate what truly fits them." And in that moment, his eyes changed. Not because the situation changed, but because his perspective did. My friend, Stoicism doesn't teach us to be blindly optimistic. It teaches us to see things as they are, and then respond with wisdom. Between toxic positivity and blind negativity, there's a path called clarity. When someone hurts you, you might think, "They meant to bring me down." Or you could consider, "Maybe they're hurting in ways I can't see." When your plans fall apart, you might say, "Nothing ever works out for me." Or you could take a deep breath and ask, "What can I learn from this?" I once met a woman named Annabelle, 69 years old. She was diagnosed with a chronic illness that forced her to completely change her lifestyle. At first, she cried often. She felt like she had lost her freedom. But slowly, day by day, she began writing down small things that made her smile. A blooming flower in her garden, a text from her granddaughter, a pain-free afternoon with quiet sunlight. She didn't deny her illness. She accepted it as part of a larger picture. And one day, she told me something beautiful. "This illness didn't take my life away. It taught me how to be more fully present in it." You see, choosing the right perspective doesn't erase the problem, but it allows you to walk through it without losing yourself. So starting today, I invite you to practice something simple. The next time something frustrates, disappoints, or wounds you, pause for a few seconds and ask, "Is there another way to look at this?" Sometimes nothing will change, but if you keep practicing, you will change. You'll become steadier, more generous, and more free within. And if this message touched something in you, I invite you to write in the comments, "I choose a wiser perspective." Or simply, "I'm learning to see life with new eyes." Just one sentence, but it may be the first step toward opening a more peaceful mind. Live by your values, not by the CROWD. Have you ever asked yourself, am I doing this because it's true to me or just because everyone else is doing it? It sounds like a simple question, but if you really pause and truly listen to the answer, you might be surprised. We're living in a fast-moving world. A new trend every week. A new lifestyle every month. And if you're not careful, you might wake up one day and realize you've been living someone else's life. Epictetus once warned us, never let the crowd determine what is good for you. And in today's noisy world, his words are more relevant than ever. I once spoke with a man named Richard. He was 61 years old, a former senior executive in a media company. After retiring, he thought he'd feel free, but instead, he felt lost. He said to me, "I thought retirement would feel like freedom, but I started doing all the things people said I should do at this age. Taking dance lessons, investing in crypto, traveling to post cool photos." I asked him, "Did those things make you feel full or just busy?" He sighed and said, "Busy, but empty." My friend, living by your values doesn't mean you're stuck in the past. It means you have roots, a compass, a clear center. The Stoics constantly ask themselves, does this really matter to me? Does this help me live with kindness, calm, and integrity? If no one saw me do this, would I still do it? You can choose to slow down, simplify, and stay true, even when the world is racing toward noise and flash. You can choose to keep your promises, even when the trend is to go with the flow. You can choose sincerity, even in a culture that rewards surface-level charm, because values never go out of style. They're just often drowned out by all the noise. I'm not telling you to reject innovation or growth. I'm simply inviting you to pause and ask, does this align with the life I want to live? And if you're not sure what your values are just yet, start with the basics. What qualities do you truly admire in others? When do you feel proud of yourself? What actions have left you with regret because they went against your deeper truth? A meaningful life isn't one filled with applause. It's a life where, when you look in the mirror each morning, you can smile gently and say, I'm living true to myself. If these words stirred something in you, I invite you to write in the comments below, I choose to live by my values, not by the crowd. Just one sentence, but it might be the strongest commitment you make to yourself in this season of your life.